morning. It's a privilege to welcome you to the AUM Civil Rights and Civic Virtue Society Speaker Breakfast Series. This series is one of the activities funded by a generous grant from the John Templeton Foundation titled From Civil Rights to Civic Virtue, Forming Character Through Community. I want to begin with some brief recognitions. I've been up doing these intros a lot in the past few months, and I need to make sure that I acknowledge the team of people who have been working on this grant proposal and this grant since its inception in May of 2021. So this team includes the following people: Dr. Lynn Stallings, Interim Associate Provost for Undergraduate Studies and Director of the Honors Program; Dr. Tara Bazayat, Associate Professor of Education Psychology; Dr. Brooke Burks, Chair of the Department of Curriculum, Instruction, and Technology; Dr. Dwana Duncombe-Payden, Lecturer and Student Success Mentor; Dr. Chelsea Ward, Chair of the Department of Biology and Environmental Science. In addition to this, we have been developing an advisory board, and we have 3 additional members from the AUM community who are on that advisory board, and they include Mr. Paul Arrington, Coordinator of the UNIV Student Success Program; Ms. Tanya Dupree, Interim Chief Diversity Officer; and Ms. Amy Ingram, Director of the Experiential Education and Engagement Center. These individuals are helping to steer all of our efforts and develop our programming, both with the speaker series, but also with future events to come. One quick point of order before I introduce the speaker. You have some programs on your tables. After his talk, I'm going to do something not typical in academic contexts. I'm going to ask you to talk with your table about things that you find in the talk that are resonant, things you resonate with, or questions that you have, and I'm going to give you about 5 minutes within your tables to talk about what you heard. And then after that, I'll open the floor for questions and answers from the floor. As I've thought about today's speaker, I thought it would be good to frame the introduction in terms of one of the core civic virtues that is grounding this grant. So these virtues are justice, courage, perseverance, hope, and solidarity. I'm going to introduce him in terms of the virtue of hope. Formally, one can define hope as a trait that enables a person to anticipate and strive for important goods, especially in the face of temptations to despair. When one looks at the past in this area, it can be easy to feel a sense of despair. For many, the past is full of sorrow, injustice, and despondency. Given this reality, it can be very difficult to imagine something good as a distinct possibility. For this reason, hope is a necessary trait. It's a facilitating disposition. It moves us to desire real goods that are possible but difficult to attain. It energizes our pursuits, endows us with resilience, fortitude, and patience. It anchors us to the values our hopes express, and it buoys us up in difficulty. In conversations with our speaker this morning prior to this event, I have a distinct sense that his message today is one of striving for a future that is alive with possibilities. Mr. Jonathan Avant is a Montgomery native, beginning his life on Maxwell Air Force Base. He's a graduate of Jefferson Davis High School and a 2011 AUM graduate. He currently serves as an accountant at Aldridge Warden & Company, and in this capacity, his portfolio focuses on small and minority-owned businesses. He served as the president of the Downtown Business Administration and as vice president of the Montgomery County Community Cooperative District. Among other areas of service, he serves on the board of directors of the River Regions Trails Project, and the Central Alabama Community Foundation, the Finance Committee of the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts, the Auburn University at Montgomery College of Business Advisory Board, and as a board member of the Valiant Cross Academy. Additionally, he's an accomplished trumpeter, producer, and co-owner of a local live music studio. He's married and has two daughters, Jazz and Juliana. Mr. Avant was recently recognized as a community hero for his work in Montgomery. We've invited him here today to tell his story, to describe the ways he's working to enact his purpose in Montgomery. We've asked him to discuss influences, the challenges he's faced in his work, the ways he's sought to address these challenges. My hope is that his talk will enable us to think deeply about ways we might put our passions and purpose towards serving this community, especially as we think about creating a hopeful future for this community. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jonathan Avant.
I'd like to pray. Lord, thank you for bringing us here this morning. Thank you for life. Thank you for this wonderful meal that you've given us this morning. But thank you for connection, more importantly, Lord. Thank you for allowing us to connect in your name today and really just uplift our community, uplift this amazing institution. Thank you for the people who work here. Thank you for the people who put on this event. And allow this time, hopefully, Lord, allow our time together here to uplift the spirits of those here, renew their minds, and give them a new outlook and a new vision, but more importantly, a new purpose and a revitalized and a refreshed purpose in this community and in this world. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So thank you for that amazing intro, Aaron. I appreciate it. And when I first got here, he was like, man, you got any slides or presentations or anything like that? And I say, no, I really want to just talk because I believe in this world we need to do more of that. Is that okay if we just talk today? We just share thoughts? And I want to be the first to talk. We know we're going to do breakouts later as well. But if anything, I would like to just leave you guys with my perspective. I believe, especially here in Montgomery, more than anywhere else in the world, we need to really champion collecting perspectives. Honestly, and I'm a firm believer that we all have a piece of God in us, and it's our duty to collect those pieces. And that comes with perspective. So I hope that I'm successful in that today and sharing my perspective as a Montgomery native and an AUM graduate, and amongst several other things. But more importantly, I'm just happy to be here, man. So yeah, it is always my pleasure to come here to AUM, always. And I was born and raised here in Montgomery, Alabama, like I said, on the military base, and to my wonderful parents who are actually in attendance today. So if y'all can, give it up for my parents right here up front. And yeah, I was born right out there on Maxwell Air Force Base, and I won't tell you the year. Just know I really enjoyed the first Top Gun movie. Just know, and I like to if you are in service, or if you are a veteran, everybody, if you can, give another round of applause to all the veterans and all the active duty soldiers that are present. Your sacrifice means everything to us, especially me. I was fortunate enough to be the only person in my family born and raised here in Montgomery, and now I have two precious daughters, Jazz and Juliana, who are now a part of that lineage of people in my family born from Montgomery, Alabama. So we take that with a lot of pride. We take that with a lot of passion. And I always joke and say I'm probably as Montgomery as you can get. I even enjoy seeing them and their little senses of humor, and I'm definitely not a suit and tie guy. I like fashion, probably because my dad used to always take me to go get Easter suits when I was little downtown, and I used to walk out. I was the first Steve Harvey. I was the first one. I was shorter. I didn't have the mustache, but I enjoyed dressing up ever since. But at the same time, I'm so a casual. I like to laugh. I like to have a good time. So please don't lose it if we have a good time today. But I like seeing my daughters being raised with the same type of humor and the same type of personality, and they if they were here, they'd get a kick out of it. And they got this new joke that they do with their hands, and I'm thinking that they were gonna do the same thing that my generation was privy to. If everybody knows that joke with your hands when you said, "This is a church, this is the steeple, open it up, and there's the people." Yeah, I thought they were gonna do that to me. I was like, "Oh man, this is a new version of that joke." They was like, "All right, Daddy, here's a hand, open it up, like squiggle it in." And anybody watch Bluey? Anybody got kids that watch Bluey? Oh, thank you. Okay, so you know where I'm going with this. And it's like, all right, put your hand in there, scratch my hand, tickle my hand. They laughed. I was like, oh, that's cool. They's like, thank you for cleaning my toilet. I was like, what is this? I was pretty offended. I was like, okay, that's not how I thought that was gonna go. But they're changing it. This generation is changing it. They picked it up from a television show, Bluey, and I was like, man, it's just a subtle reminder how, as time goes on, things have to change. Things have to change. I was looking for a very wholesome joke with church people in your hands, but didn't get it. So, I laughed and I almost fell out laughing because I'm in change. Like, I walk in change. I love change. Change is inevitable. That's the only constant. And in our city and where we're from in Montgomery, this is what we're known. This is what we're known for across the entire world. Change. So whether it's something as humorous as that and something as small as that, all the way up to something that changes the way we literally treat each other and changes the way we live, where we live, how we live, where we work, how we work. And, when it comes to that, so to speak, Montgomery's and me as the president of the Downtown Business Association right now, I get to see it a lot. People come here from across the globe to really understand what happened here in our past. And me being so change-minded, I embrace it, but I always ask the question, what about our present? What about our future? And it's always a question in my mind about what happened, right? Where's the change right now? And then I look at everybody here. It's in everybody. We have to unlock that. And I was talking at the table before here, and we should never get in the culture of allowing the elephant in the room to get comfortable. Not only allowing the elephant in the room to get comfortable, but allowing the elephant in the room to set up shop, change his address to that room. And that becomes the overall brand. Those things affect so much that doesn't meet the eye. They affect economic development. They affect education. Those things affect neighborhoods. Those things affect safety. All of that comes from one simple question. Who are you? If somebody was to ask the country, America, who are you? If somebody was to ask our state, Alabama, who are you? If somebody was to ask our city, Montgomery, who are you? these are not only questions that I know I have entertained in closed door rooms and boardrooms, and these are questions that I know still to be true as I see tourists and visitors leave our city. So as we walk around individually asking ourselves that question, who are we? That's where we start. That's where the elephant in the room is getting comfortable. And that's where the devil is playing all of his games and having a time of his life. But when it comes down to that identity, you kind of put it like this. If I had 10 countries in a room, each country was a person. I'm pretty sure America would be the most extroverted person in the room, right? Right? Hey, you want to go see a football game, man? Let's go hang, dude. Let's go. I'm pretty sure America would be that person, right? But have y'all seen that person in the room that smiles, that laughs, that jokes, that pokes fun, and you know that something's on the inside not right? Yeah, and you know they're crying, they're laughing through their pain. Or you know that they're smiling and they're playing and they're poking through their pain. And everybody else responds and just plays along with them because they think they're picking up on a love language where nobody's addressing the trauma. And that's what really I wanted to highlight today, Aaron, is that. And the title of the message is America's Trauma and Montgomery's Promise. Because I want to share my perspective on the hope that I see as clear as day, not only in the city, but at this university. I'm proud to be a Warhawk for many reasons. But more importantly, I'm proud to be a Warhawk because of how it latched on to my perspective and my purpose getting here, and how the education I got while I was here fueled my life to see everything differently no matter what room I was in. I changed the room. And if I have, all the students here, I got all students, right? Everybody's younger than 30. So everybody, no matter where your education came from and how you attained your education, I'll repeat that one line we just said this morning. We had a great conversation before I got up here, is that we need to start getting in the mode of looking at education as a means of change, not a way of life or a house or a car or a nice check or a title. How can I choose my degree with the approach of I am going to change the world? Well, you first have to start with yourself, right? You first have to start with knowing who you are and what works for you. So if we'll go back to the economical level, if we go back to the community level, I see a lot of that dichotomy here in Montgomery, right? And everybody does. The president of Downtown Business Association, I don't know how many people spend a lot of time downtown, but when you're standing at the fountain, you guys know where the fountain at, right? Well, okay. Well, the fountain is literally in the middle, side by side. And those who know can attest. The fountain is literally in the middle to the right where the call was sent to launch the Civil War. And to the left where Rosa Parks boarded the bus that she would eventually get arrested on. Across the street from each other. And then you look straight and you're glaring at the state capitol and all the historic things that happen there. So not only how do I speak to that dichotomy, but how do I embrace that dichotomy, turn it into pride, and how do I recycle that pride and turn it into purpose that will eventually become my life's work? Well, first, when you speak on that dichotomy, it always comes down to a traditional, American conversation, and that's war and rights. War and rights. And I put down a couple definitions here, so I'm going to go to the Webster's for just a second. War, the definition of it. A state of armed conflict between nations, different nations or states, or different groups within a nation or state. I'm going to say that again. War. A state of armed conflict between different nations or states or different groups within a nation or state. On the other side of that dichotomy, rights. What is morally correct? Period. Then it's another definition. I love how they give like 5 different definitions, but a moral or legal entitlement to have or obtain something or to act in a certain way. A moral or legal entitlement to have or obtain something or act in a certain way. Those things are very, very important, right? War is how we amass a lot of what we have, whether it's the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, any type of war, any type of conflict. Rights comes usually right after that. And has anybody ever heard the phrase, the victor is the one who tells the story? Right. So that story usually gets tucked into rights some sort of way. And when that happens, that war versus rights trickles down to church versus state. State versus church. Once you have the rights, you have a state. And then the war also influences that. So let's go back to those definitions one time. A war, a state of armed conflict between different nations or states or different groups within a nation or state. And rights, what is morally correct. So with Montgomery, we have 2 different versions of that. When you look at war, everybody knows Montgomery for the Civil War. And when you look at rights, they don't look at the Civil War. What do they look at? Civil rights. I wonder why is that? One leaned a lot more towards the moral side of things, right? And another one leaned a lot more to the state side of things, an establishing state. So it's all about the rule book, right? Which one establishes the rules? And I actually, this was one of my last conversations with my daughters, the golden rule. And my 6-year-old Juliana, very opinionated, very, very much so. Lord Jesus. Nobody understands that more than her Mimi up front here. She said, Daddy, I know what the golden rule is. I was like, what is it, baby? Treat others the way you want to be treated. I was like, you are so correct. And then my 8-year-old would then go in and correct her grammar and say the same thing. But so correct. That's the golden rule that a lot of people hear. AUM taught me a little bit. AUM gave me a bigger lens. AUM gave me the other golden rule. You know, my education here gave me the perspective to see the other golden rule very, very clearly. And y'all know what that golden rule is that whoever owns the gold makes the rules. Whoever owns the gold makes the rules. So let's just pause right there. I was born in Montgomery. I said that. But what I didn't say is the actual place I was born, on base. Not really, though. I was born in church. Born and raised in church. Actually, Mom and Dad, I didn't know I probably didn't know anything about that. So I was just singing it until maybe I was young, maybe 12 or 13, when they said, "You can't join in, you got to be born in." That was a song, as you know, in a Pentecostal world, and I didn't understand it, but it was my foundation. Treating others the way you would like to be treated was my foundation. I didn't know what a Democrat was. I didn't know what a Republican was. I didn't know what Constitution was. I knew that first. But I'm not unique here. Everybody in this room learned that first. We all learned that first. And whether you're spiritual or religious or not, you can attest to the fact that, especially in nowadays where kids have tablets and we live in a virtual reality society, and Bitcoin has climbed, and so on and so forth, that everyone is naturally good. We learn behaviors over time, and those behaviors then dictates our health, and our health dictates our consumption. I won't take you too much into AUM College of Business because Dr. Ross isn't here, but the entire market is dictated off of these things, guys. So if I got on this side, that one golden rule was saying treat someone the way you would like to be treated. As soon as it cracks, money flows out of that crack. It flows, currency. However that crack, whether it's a war, whether it's a simple slap in the face, or whether it's a Jerry Springer episode gone bad, it's all attention. Right? And it's a documentary on Netflix, Social Dilemma, I think that's what it's called. They had this one line. They said, if you're online and you're not buying a product, that means you are the product. That's where we've gotten. So let me bring it back home. My grandfather, and I'm saying this for everybody, our grandparents literally fought each other. Right? Black and white. Civil rights, I'm sorry. They fought each other. So the generation after that, because of that fight, avoided each other. Now my generation, we don't even know each other. Everything's about diversity and inclusion. We don't even know each other. So the next generation, if this trend continues, will ignore each other. They won't even have the interest of knowing each other, which is why my daughters are so comfortable talking to somebody on Fortnite, right? And not going outside and to their neighbor's house. You know, this is where we've gotten. So morally, that foundation is important. It's very, very important. So back to the definitions one time on the word civil. Whether we're talking about civil war or civil rights, the word civil is defined as to be courteous and polite, relating to ordinary citizens and their concerns as distinct from military or ecclesiastical matters. That's the word civil. And then civil rights is defined: the rights of citizens to political or social freedom and equality. Civil war is defined as a war between citizens of the same country. But civil war and civil rights, it's crazy. The irony they both lead with the word civil, which is to be courteous and polite. I don't know how you can be courteous and polite in a war. But, yeah. This is why that foundation is so important. Now, when we go to the other side of that, and we talk state, or we talk the other golden rule, after being raised in the church, or while being raised in the church, I also, just like every other kid, succumb to peer pressure, and you start listening to new music, and you start hanging out, and you start getting a little swag, and you start, walking a little different, smelling a little different. Back then, I used to have on Cool Water cologne. Anybody remember Cool Water? Cool Water cologne. I used to try to find me some Cool Water. It was blue and everything. That's when I really jumped all the way into music. Luckily, my dad purchased me a trumpet before I listened to any rap music. But then when I did listen to rap music, it just, took over after that. So that foundation started to slowly become malleable, where it never went anywhere, but it always changed how I approached people or a social environment, not realizing that even right now we're all a sum of everything that happened in our lives up until that point. We are all a sum of that. So I never went too far because I was a sum of being raised in church. I never went too far. I always had a boundary. But I went out there and, that's important because when I started performing and really getting into music, my brother-in-law, who also graduated from AUM's College of Business, he said, "Hey man, that little $50 that you're making off of these gigs is not going to take care of that woman who's winking at you over there in the corner." I was like, I guess you're right. So at that time, I was just really, really out there, and he was like, "Man, you need to go pick up something that you can, fall back on." So as I say to students now, I was there. My only reason I'm going to school is to fall back on something. Only reason I'm going to school is for a check. Only reason I'm going to school is I had it in my mind that I was going to be Quincy Jones. I mean, I was going to have hair, but I was going to be Quincy Jones. I was going to be Quincy Jones. And I was just going to AUM for a check. I was like, yeah, okay. If I survive, I'll do it. And then when I got here, I came from a music program at ASU to majoring in accounting. So I went from expert level music course in ASU to general music appreciation in AUM. And I was like, what is happening right now? Then I would leave the general music class and go to intermediate accounting with Dr. Dill. I was like, oh my gosh, what is really happening right now? This is not Kansas. I'm not in Kansas anymore. And I bucked the system a lot. And I'll add this little slither in there, and I talked about this a lot at graduation, but she saw me. She saw me before I saw me. And a lot of times, your purpose can be written on the walls. And while you're looking everywhere else, everybody else is seeing it clear as day. So to all my educators in the room, all my instructors in the room, this is how we change the state. War is financed. People don't just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to fight." No. They have to pay for those things. And the strength of your country and the strength of Your defense has to come from a strong economic foundation. So to change how you fight and to change how you defend, you have to change how the money is made. I'm the only person, the only guy in my family that did, well, in my line, in my bloodline, that didn't serve in the military. And I think it's because I needed to be here today and talk to you guys about this. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. I was just kidding. Yeah, my dad was in Air Force. My older brother is a Marine. Grandfather went to the Army, and my other grandfather was in the Navy. Literally every branch, except Coast Guard maybe. But it's very important that our troops and that our military has a complete team behind them. Because the military shouldn't fight wars by themselves. Ask Ukraine, for Pete's sake. And we don't ever want it to get that bad, ever. And I don't think it ever will. I think we have the best military in the world. I recently was named honorary commander at Maxwell Air Force Base. And the purpose of that program or initiative is to get a leader from the community to partner with a certain department on the base in order to strengthen their relationships with the citizens. So strengthen their civic relationships. And that civic relationship that I am covering is with the procurement department. And procurement is the way they go about issuing contracts to businesses. And those businesses may be local citizens and local minority businesses, or those businesses may be national, large corporations. But that's my role there. And specifically, I took that for the same reason that we're discussing this today. When you have the marriage of church and state, or when you have the marriage of civic responsibility, aka the golden rule, number one, treating people right, and that marries the other golden rule of who has the gold and who makes the rules, who owns this. It all comes down to one that will lead. One has to lead. Anybody can guess which one has to lead? Can anybody guess? All right, so I'll make it easy. When it comes down to our tourism industry in Montgomery, now I only have to keep up with this stuff because I serve on a few economic development projects that are very, very impactful to this. But our tourism industry is $1 billion industry right now in Montgomery. And it's largely driven by two ideals, right? The Civil War and civil rights. So which one do you guys think is leading the way? Civil rights. I wonder why. Right? One, the Civil War literally played a part in creating the entire country. The entire country. For better or for worse. Whichever side of the coin you land on with that. You would think everybody, right, will come here for that. It's all about inspiration. How do I move you to do something? Because if I move you, that's also going to rewire that foundation of behavior that we discussed that then hijacks the market. Then we can determine how we consume. And we can determine who we consume from. I like to jump back to the simplicity of it all, and I'm going to come right down to this. Everything that I'm talking about is surely how vulnerable can we get with each other. So vulnerable is, will my friends like it if I stand up in a room and say I'm supporting this black business? Will my friends like it if I walk in the room with a white friend that I look at like a brother. Will my friends appreciate it if I attend a white church, a predominantly white church? Will my friends appreciate it if I attend a predominantly black church? These are the things that are affecting it affects where we live. All these type of questions affect how we work, where we work. It affects how we spend money, where we spend money. And just like those cracks from earlier, corporate dollars just flow out of those cracks. So bad that small businesses here, I was like, man, can't compete with Target today. Can't compete with Walmart today. I can't compete with McDonald's today. Can't compete with, Starbucks today. That was for you. So, if MLK showed us anything, and if the civil rights movement showed us anything, it showed us the power of vulnerability. And it also showed us how this world that we live in will do anything it can to stop it from happening. Because when we're vulnerable, your perspective comes out. And when I sat in that class as a past music major, and I'm the only one in the accounting class throwing pencils at the ceiling, that teacher didn't give up on me. She was vulnerable. I was vulnerable. But then the second word comes into play of inspiring people, and that's humility. The entire time, I don't think it was until I graduated where I really understood her merit and how important she was in the accounting world. And for her to be so humble to slow down for me, once I graduated, I saw banking completely different. So once I started AUM, I also started in banking simultaneously. And I amassed a pretty successful 12-year career in banking. And the reason why I left is because I saw more and I knew more, because that teacher shared her perspective with me. Because I saw more and I knew more, now that I had her perspective in me, I just couldn't decline a loan and just go to the next client. Knowing the societal issues that I visibly see right in front of me. Knowing how important it is to do small things at your business each and every day that will lead you to the bank for these $1 million loans. I had an option. Will I be a successful corporate banker and just continue to take orders from businesses who have already figured it out? Or do I jump in the trenches with my AUM degree in accounting with this knowledge and this experience now that I have to really get vulnerable, show my humility to the community, and not only that, but to small business owners and to minority business owners, so they'll understand my perspective on faith, on community, on this country, on excellence, and on being competitive and doing it together. Before Martin Luther King passed away, he had a very chilling phrase that he said, and it stays with me. It's probably one of the most chilling things I've ever heard. He said, after everything he did, shortly before he got assassinated, he said, "I feel like I led my people into a burning building." It's time to put that burning house out and make it safe for the people that he led in there. Because the people that he led in that building wasn't just black. As we see now, they're Hispanic. they're Middle Eastern, they're Asian. Civil rights is for the entire world because of how it inspired people. But that inspiration, in that same vein of when he said that, that inspiration never reached the economical side of things. It never reached the business side of things. It never reached how we spend money with each other. It never reached how we educate each other. It never reached how we teach each other. It never reached those things in the same depths of how he reached just plain old civil rights. Civil rights. So my charge to everyone here, be bold in who you are, how you were made. Be confident that who you are and how you were made up to this point is for a purpose, on purpose. Choose how you're going to change the world through your education here. And never allow fear or that elephant in the room and getting comfortable with that elephant in the room keep you from being civil. Because once we're all able to use everything, once we deploy our wealth, our resources, once we deploy our institutions like our schools, our churches, and once we're able to deploy those things to open our minds to be humble and vulnerable as a business, as an institution, as a country, in the process of welcoming perspectives. That burning house, picture a neighborhood where the biggest house on the block is burning. One house is white owned, one house is Asian owned, one house is owned by Middle Easterns, one house is owned by a different community. Everybody running out of their house frantic to put out that one fire. Because they know if that house burns down, everybody's values go down with it. And the drop in that value is the reason why people come to Montgomery for civil rights. Factual. More people come for that versus a topic that literally created our nation. The beauty of Civil War, and I said it, it's beauty in Civil War, and it's beauty in civil rights, because it's all perspective. Perspective. And at the very least, it's connection. It's a connection. So never allow those things to prevent you from being civil. And I'm an accounting major, so I got an acronym for it. And I wrote it down: civil, creative. A lot of times when we're in business and we're making money and we're very structured or we're very political or what, we lose our ability to think outside the box. Innovative. Visionary. Initiative. And loving. Once again, creative, innovative, visionary, having initiative, and being loving. Never allow your fear, or never allow the dichotomy of the world to affect your ability to be civil. Because once we all are that here in Montgomery, that is our blueprint to establishing our community that people can use for a blueprint in establishing the entire country. when I took over the DBA, I had this in mind, and I thought to put it on our website, and it's this is what I'll end on. It always makes me think of a wonderful world when I read this. That's one of my favorite songs of all time, A Wonderful World. This reading this always makes me think of it. It says, "Dear Montgomeryans, our rich history and current opportunities lead us straight to the doorstep of shaping our identity as a city and the future of our country. So you ask, what does downtown Montgomery have to do with that? Everything. From the building walls that heard a telegraph launch the first strike of the Civil War to a view directly across the street of the place where a brave woman boarded an evening bus, decided to look oppression in the face and say no. Montgomery's past has proven to be ground zero for our country's conscience and the continual progress of our democracy. Those constitutional progressions have always seemed to route themselves through our businesses and values. From the economic diversity that was born out of painful decades of community, perseverance, and love, to now experiencing award-winning multicultural restaurants, world-class residential development, a vibrant art scene, a championship minor league baseball club, go Biscuits, a booming technology industry, and innovative infrastructure. Downtown Montgomery is now poised to show the world how powerful businesses can be when communities embrace each other, collectively contribute towards healthy economic development, and working together towards an identity rooted in strong American values. Downtown Montgomery can easily be found in history books throughout the globe. But today, the Downtown Business Association wants to show the world once again how we are not only making history, but creating a brighter future for all mankind through a business community that anyone from around the world can come to work, live, play, develop, and embrace. And I'm going to add another one on there, educate. So that was my letter I wrote maybe some years ago. And it always, like I said, brings that song to mind, A Wonderful World. I'll end on this, and you may know the words. Thank y'all so much. I love AUM. I love you guys. Be bold, be great.
All right. So I want to give you a few minutes, like I said at the beginning, to talk amongst yourselves at the tables. Resonant ideas that stuck with you, questions that you would like to raise. Let's talk for a few minutes around the tables, and then I'll open the floor for a few minutes of conversation as well. You may begin. All right, let's bring our conversations to a close. I'm going to call Mr. Avant back up to the podium, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions. So who would like to speak first? Who would like to ask a question first? And then I'll bring the mic to you so you can ask the question we can hear, and then Mr. Avant can respond. Who wants in? What questions do you have?
Testing.
Yes. Got a question.
So I'm Captain Luis, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is that I grew up in Montgomery as well, and I am a public school kid. Nice. So I grew up on the other side of the coin.
Right on,
and,
right on.
So everything you say, I think, is completely valid. I guess my question to you would be, what is the course of action that you see that people need to take? I think we all, if we're here, we understand the message. We agree with your message.
That's right.
What do we do?
Pride in each other. Having pride in each other is the next step. However you do that in your way. If I don't look like you, have pride in me. If you don't look like me, I got pride in you. I got pride in where you live. I got pride in where you work. And if you are a contributing aspect of this community, I not only have pride in it, but I got responsibility to support you. Because just like a country, if we're known for a specific GDP, and if that GDP tanks, everybody loses. We have a responsibility to support anybody that's Korean here, right? We have a responsibility equally to support anybody that's black or white. So economically, relationships matter. And economically, being vulnerable matters. And economically, having humility enough to be vulnerable dictates how you show up for each and everybody. And I say that specifically because it should never be an instance to where I'm afraid to walk in an all-white church that does amazing things in the community. It should never be an instance where not one white company supports a predominantly black school. Never. But from the super high level, it's a million reasons, right? It's all just excuses for us not being vulnerable, not having humility, and not being able to be prideful in each other. All right. It's easy to be prideful in yourself and what you've accomplished and what you've amassed. How can you be prideful in someone else's life that isn't as fraction as successful as you in your terms of being successful? Yeah.
Hi. So you had mentioned that if the trend continued, that you felt like the next generation could ignore each other. So my question is, I'm raising my babies obviously to not treat someone differently because of the color of their skin. So do you think that, in the future with the next generation coming up and us teaching our babies to love each other no matter what, and our kids as they grow up, that it doesn't matter what color their skin is, that we would have a better future for our future babies? So
these questions actually connect very much so. And I didn't say a lot in that first question because I tried to make it as broad as I could. But specifically, it's a lot to confront trauma, right? It takes a lot, because us being sums of everything that's ever happened in our lives, some things we can't control, some things we can. But when we have to confront those things, it takes a village, right? It's not often where you see someone, like, I'll just for the sake of conversation, me, right? I had to go through a lot of tears, and I had to go through a lot to do what I'm doing right now, this second, and say what I'm saying right now, this second, to this entire room. But the one thing that stayed constant, my peer circle from being born on a military base, and my intimate circle always looked like this room. Always. And with that peer circle always had a certain level of vulnerability in it. Nothing was pretentious. Nothing was vain. we were able to open up and be ourselves. So my direct answer to that, to follow up from what I tried to add more context on the previous question, is we have to really identify when our kids, white or black, are dimming themselves down to make someone else feel comfortable. First step is we have to keep them in rooms like this from when they're young. And I applaud Montgomery for having that dynamic, right? I was born on a military base, but even when I got outside of the military base, I was always in rooms like this, but I always had confidence at home, right? They taught a lot of confidence. Speak clearly. You got to look up. So, I can't hear you, so you got to talk loud. Well, now people can't shut me up. But what she was doing is she was instilling a level of confidence in myself. So if I was in a peer group that was all white, I knew what to do. It was in me. And the same thing in reverse. But we cannot allow our kids to dim themselves down around kids who don't look like them, because that turns into an adult who lives their entire lives for someone else's pleasure. And that's not right. It's a lot of trauma there as we even speak. But where the hope lies and where the real action lies is, and I hate to say it, but parenting, right? Parenting. We can teach our kids to be themselves all day and all night. But whoever's teaching them, if it's just going straight through, and that little mini version of the parent is showing up in a crowd that doesn't look like their parents' peer circle, it's some trauma that we have to also address in us as parents. And that goes for institutions too. So it can either be parents or institution. If my institution, whether it be a church, a school, a hospital, if my institution's mindset is limited, but the clients and the users of those institutions aren't, it can really, on the business side, it can limit your growth. On the social side and what we're talking about, it can cause for bad culture, extremely bad culture in your workplace, in your communities. And that bad culture, depending on what you're selling, could be life or death. Yep. So,
okay.
Great questions.
Okay. So I really did enjoy your message for today. You're welcome. So I was wondering, because, you're talking about our future is now, and with the new generation to come, how, if we don't get a hold of things, how, we as a future generation will be messed up or repeating some of the same cycles. What would you say that you enjoy about what our generation, the next generation that's coming after us? What would you think? What do you think? How do you see their growth, like in their development? What do you think about them? Like, what do you enjoy about them,
Oh, man, you're talking about confidence. Well, and I would even say when I used to hear this phrase growing up, I used to take it as a slight. With y'all generation, it's a superpower when we say ignorance is bliss. It is a superpower because y'all generation and even my kids, like, what's the song say? Y'all don't care about nothing? Y'all don't care. Y'all don't care. It's like none of y'all got a fraction of the trauma that the generations before y'all had to deal with, because the generations before y'all put y'all so far up in comfort and I believe not only y'all have to relish in that ignorance, but y'all also have to two things. You also have to know how and where to reach back in the past. How and where to reach back in the past. And then you also have to never doubt your ability to lead. Because nobody in the room will tell you, but this generation has the fastest takeoff ever from us being able to keep up. And because of that, y'all have a demand to be leaders at a younger age. So how and where to reach back? Y'all don't have I don't believe y'all have the luxury of moving forward without mentorship. Right? So y'all have to have them in. Like with my generation, we kind of still got dirty and played outside and learned a lot of hard lessons that our parents was like, oh, go ahead out there. Go ahead and get, we're here to catch you always. But y'all have to really reach back and get mentorship, the right mentorship, be able to deploy that mentorship to your purpose in your life. And once you have that right village around you, be extremely bold about leading that change of what you're wanting to aspire to do. And we got your back. We got your back. I told him I'll be going somewhere else later this evening for a recruiting trip. So it's exactly the statement I say to all of our interns at our firm.
I think that's a fitting place to end for today. Before you leave, on your programs, there's a QR code. I would be very grateful if you could click on that QR code to offer us some feedback about today's event, and hopefully we can keep in contact for future events as well. Please join me one last time in thanking Mr. Avant for his talk today.
Thank y'all so much.